Hi, and welcome to our webinar all about turning homework routines into a more positive programme of independent study. Thank you so much for being here with us remotely from wherever you are in the country. I hope you find this a really helpful session for thinking about shifting the culture in your school or department towards learning consolidation that students find rewarding. So my name's Nicola and I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here at Educake, and I try to help teachers get as most out of the tool that Educake offers. So I'm here today with my fabulous colleague Sarah, who's an account manager here at Educake. She's going to be sharing with you her top tips for a student-centred approach to online assessment. We're also delighted and thrilled to have James Frost here as our expert guest. He's the Deputy Head of Bullerswood School for Boys, and he's going to talk to you about his unique context, the challenges that they face, the solutions that they've found, as well as his insights into how Educake has helped them and how it can help you as well. So before we get started, I wanted to draw your attention to the Q&A feature of this webinar, which you'll find at the bottoms of your screens. If you have any questions for us at all, please do type them into the box and we'll go through them and answer them at the end of the presentation in about 20 minutes time. So without further ado, I'll hand over to James.
Thanks very much, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name's James Frost. I'm Deputy Head of Bullerswood School for Boys. We are a relatively new school. We're actually in our 6th year of operation. We're up to our full capacity of 900 students in a fantastic new state-of-the-art building. And it's fair to say that over the course of our sort of history, we've had the challenges of new builds and DFE funding and, you know, the challenges of that all the other schools faced in terms of COVID and lockdown and remote learning. We've kind of come through all of that. We got a positive progress 8 of about 0.2, which put us the second best boys school in the borough we're in. And indeed, when put in order of disadvantaged students, our P8 was one of the top in the borough. That's including all of the sort of selective grammar schools. I think as the schools developed, our kind of ethos around homework has kind of developed as well. Really, we've endeavoured to move to kind of a culture of independent study where the boys are keen to go home and consolidate their learning. We're actually an early start school. So boys are in lesson and learning by 7:45. That means they leave at 2:20. Leaving a significant amount of time for them to hopefully go home and consolidate everything they've done during the day. Our aim, therefore, was to kind of develop that culture. And I think with the added pressures around screen time and indeed the really recent study around writing being the best way for students to kind of form the neurons for memory, we wanted to make sure that the homework, and indeed we've now moved to the idea of kind of independent study as the thing the boys do rather than something at home. It is their opportunity to study independently. And we wanted to make sure that what we were giving them in terms of online study was absolutely high caliber, quality work that they were getting impactful feedback from. And kind of that is where, for us, Educate came in. So I think I'll hand over to Sarah, and then it's back to me just to talk through some of the examples that we've had.
Great, thank you, James. Yes, so I'm going to give a couple of examples of 2 areas on Educake that I know James will actually go on to speak about a bit more later, within the context of Bullerswood School for Boys. Both of these really allow students to reflect on their independent study and plan their own next steps. The first one is the individual student reports that we provide. So I'm just going to share my screen, bear with me. Here we go, so you can see a teacher homepage here. So as students begin to use Educate regularly, their progress data is automatically aggregated into an individual progress report. And this clearly shows their performance by subject and question type. So I'll just show you where to find these in Manage Students, Classes and Years. And we're just going to have a look at one of our students in Year 11. And download the report from here. There we go. So the report then summarises the students' strongest and weakest topics at the bottom, so they can choose what to focus their own efforts on. It also shows the number of questions answered in each area, and this can highlight particular areas that are being ignored to ensure that breadth of study. Many of our teachers using Educake print off these reports for parents' evenings, so they can form a focus for discussion, and it's a real positive starting point for parents and students to take away with them after those meetings. Reports can be downloaded like this, as I showed you, from Managed Students Classes and Years, but they can also be found in the Mark book, the Student League tables, track progress and quiz results pages. So if you've not found them, do go away and have a look, because they're really, really useful. I also wanted to have a look at Study and Quiz Yourself today, which I think is an area that James's students probably use quite a lot if they're going off and planning their own study. So this is a student page. This is Finley Cooper, one of my students, one of my test students, I should say. So this progress data in Study and Quiz Yourself can be found by students on their home pages. It's live data within this purple box here. I wanted to focus on this area today as it has a huge amount of potential that I think many of our teachers who subscribe to Educake aren't always fully aware of, because you're all so busy. And that's because it's contained within the student's homepage, so you can't see this yourselves. This is Finley's page. Finley can see his upcoming quizzes in his orange box here. And if we want to encourage him to take ownership and study independently, this is where Study and Quiz Yourself can come in. We want to draw his attention to these purple boxes. In this purple menu here, Finley can see all of the subjects that his school has Educake for. Mine goes above and beyond because this is a test student, so you can literally see every exam board that Educake covers, so obviously it wouldn't have as many of those on it. But in this purple board here, they can see through a very clear traffic light system. The colour coding means that if we're hoping for students to be truly reflective, they could be logging in regularly to Educake and trying to make these traffic light numbers green across the board, plugging any gaps that they can see and not avoiding those topics that they might be a bit afraid of. So let's drill down and look at chemistry for Finley. Here we go. So we can see that Finley has focused his efforts on rates of reaction because he's answered 36 questions within that chemistry topic, and he's only achieved 36%. So when he's being reflective, he might decide to keep going with this until his score improves. Or he might decide to look at a topic that is 0 at the moment and start a completely new area of study. Educake also provides a filter button at the top here, where students can just show only their weakest topics. And they can also create quizzes across multiple topics here. Those multiple topics, sorry, just to go back to that, these would be really useful at set points in the year once curriculum coverage has been completed in class. So I would suggest, though, that when students are starting out using Study and Quiz Yourself, they might need a bit of guidance. So teachers might want to guide them in this process, perhaps directing them to particular areas of study. For example, their homework one week might be to set themselves a quiz on groups in the periodic table. Before taking a quiz, students can also click on the Study button here. And this allows them to view our fantastic visual study guides that we have available for science and geography. But I should say we are adding to this bank all the time, so do send in your requests if we don't have them for your subject and you would like them. So when a student has decided what they want to study, they simply click on that quiz button. I'll go back to it. Here we go. Let's just say that Finley wanted to do a States of Matter quiz. They would click on the quiz button to build the quiz, just like you would as a teacher. They can customize this in terms of the level of content and challenge that they want for themselves. So they're making those decisions for themselves. And then the quiz just looks like one that their own teachers would have set. So it would go through. So it allows them to make that decision as well. So James, I'll pass back to you and I will continue screen sharing and highlight any features that you want to mention about what you use it with.
Thanks very much, Sarah. So I think from our point of view, sort of homework policies, homework timetables, homework in general will always be a point of contention. I think from school to home, it's an area of friction. There's either too much, too little. It's too easy. There's not enough scaffolding. And so, as I said before, us developing that independence was really important for us. And part of that was around the sort of frequency and quantity of work that's set. So we actually leave that to our heads of department to decide what the frequency and quantity will be. Now, that level of autonomy comes with its risks, but at the same time, as a senior leader, I am able to go and extract data at various points, or maybe weekly, monthly, and then just keep a weather eye on how things are going. I think from a point of view of implementation, we have been extremely fortunate to have a really tenacious middle leader, head of humanities, who kind of took the project, rolled the project out small scale, and then went full scale to the point where we now sign up to every subject. And all of our heads of department are sort of bought in and are experts in the building. I think another key thing for the project we had was kind of having those key staff really skilled up, in order that when you came across things that you weren't really sure about, they were sort of your go-to people. I think as an example of the implementation at department level, I've got a really experienced English department. I think it's fair to say that they are so experienced. They have seen a number of education secretaries go by, let alone a number of homework policies. And from their point of view, what they're able to do is they're able to track student progress. And at that point, they can highlight what the areas of weakness are in their class down to a granular student level. And once they've got that information, that then really keenly informs what they're going to set as the next steps in terms of work, which bits do the students as a class whole need to consolidate, and maybe that will feed into the actual lesson planning. So as an example, in English, it might be that they're struggling with a part of the creative writing, therefore that needs to go back into the lesson, and some work is done in the lesson, and then at the same time it then can be reset. And I think that for those really experienced staff who, as I say, have seen homework policies go by, their engagement with Educake has been absolutely phenomenal, because they get that really rich information that they can then leverage and use when they're setting their independent study. The students at the same time can then do the same thing. They're able to then go and do the same kind of self-analysis. I think Sarah mentioned parents' evenings, so we're back to face-to-face parents' evenings. We're really excited about that. One of the best takeaways for parents is for them to physically have something in their hand. I think there's an opportunity for things to be lost in the ether in terms of emails going home and letters going home. But if you're able to actually physically hand over that student report and highlight to the parent exactly the content they need to be working on, that's a really big takeaway. It means that the parent is really well informed, and they're more likely to then be able to support you in terms of the learning at home or wherever it is taking place. And as I say, we call it independent study, so that the boys can work on it anywhere. But at the same time, as a parent myself, it is good when you've got that little cheat sheet to say, okay, these are the topics that you need to be working on. Which ones of those specifically are you going to do tonight? And then as a parent, you can go along and you can say, well, why don't you choose 10 questions in biology or 10 questions in physics working on radiation, whichever one they need to be working on, in order that as a parent you're brought into the system as well. And I think that has worked really fantastically well for us, for the parents to not only come to face-to-face parents evenings again, but also then to have that takeaway, to have that little tool to kind of support them, supporting their sons with the work. So I think that has been really powerful for us. As Sarah said, one of the big steps, and I think this is still very much a work in progress, to try and get the students to get themselves studying the correct content. It is human nature for them to choose the things they're good at and to revise the things they're good at because it makes them feel good. So I think that study and quiz yourself element is something that we're working on as a school. As Sarah said, that's their own log in, that's what they see. It shows them what they're good at, and so it's giving them the confidence, and it's giving them the ability to take the risk and say, okay, I really do need to work on my maths and science. That has, science exams began, the boys have struggled to take their math skills and apply them to their science exam. So the fact that it's highlighted to the student here, okay, that is really what you need to be working on, to kind of give them that confidence to go away and do their own little bit of independence. So I can track as a classroom teacher, I can track as a leader, and I can track as a senior leader what is happening on a class level. But at the same time, the students are then able to go and do that. So this tracking feature for me is absolutely phenomenal. I'm able to look at a granular level on individual students. I'm able to just check that whatever the head of department has decided will be the departmental frequency, just to make sure that all classes are being set the kind of amount of homework, or sorry, the amount of independent study that matches the amount of curriculum time they have. But then at the same time, I'm able to, give my middle leaders the autonomy to go away and say, okay, well, this class have really struggled on this bit of work. That forms really, rich conversations at a department level in terms of, is it this content in all classes that they're struggling with, and therefore do we need some departmental training, or is it that class because maybe that's a weakness of that teacher, and that teacher could do with going and having a look at a few lessons on that topic in particular, in order that we can improve the boys' engagement with that content. And I think that has really been one of the most impactful things, is that granular level analysis from student to classroom teacher to middle leader and then to senior leaders. And one of the things, really the reason I'm sat here today, is because Educake have been so responsive to us and our feedback, and saying, well, can we have this now? Can we have this now? Can we have this now? And I know, and it might be mentioned briefly, but they're looking at kind of a senior leader or an administrator area where I'm able to see kind of whole school usage. So at the moment, I can log in as an individual subject and look at, see how maths are doing, see how English is doing, see how science is doing. Well, this would be a central login where I can see how everyone is getting on. And indeed, I know that as of today, we had set some targets, and I think that was one of the things that was really important for our implementation of the project, was communicating it clearly with parents that this is the go-to place for their sons to be doing work, and at the same time communicating successes. This is how many questions we've answered correctly compared to national average. And as of today, we had a target of 1 million by Christmas. We're actually up to 1,049,000 as of today. In a school of 900, that's on average 1,100 questions per student in quite a short period of time, in a project that's actually relatively new. So I think that kind of level of reporting for us has meant that we've actually been able to really drive this process, drive the project itself, and then getting to the point where hopefully we will begin to develop sort of really good systems within the school around independent study, but at the same time really good systems around rewarding students. And indeed at department level, you're able to just track the progress of those classes, and then equally have a look at the student league tables. And I think student league tables is really powerful because it shows you not only how they're doing on the questions the school has set them, but then how many questions they have set themselves. And so you're really able to catch students out and say, by the way, I know something you don't know. I know that you are actually the highest performing student in terms of independent study. You have completed the most questions across the whole school independently in all your subjects. And that really brings a smile to their face. And that then gives us another opportunity to kind of reward them and build that confidence. And that is what it's really about. Homework has been, as I said, that kind of wedge, that friction. Actually getting them into habitual independence is where we are aiming. And from our school's point of view, Educake has kind of been the platform that has helped us to do that. And as I say, they've been so responsive that we give the feedback, and we see things change kind of in real time to help us improve implementation in school. And I think handing back over to you, Lily.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you, James, for sharing all those really meaningful stats as well. That's really great. So I wanted to take a brief moment. James has already sort of mentioned it, but we have got a new analysis tool that's going to be coming out very soon, and it's going to make it even easier to do all the things that James was just talking about. So I'm going to have a look now at the questions that you've sent us. So hang on just a moment. Okay, so I've got a question here from Neil. So just wondering, in the boys' school, do teachers set homework at all, or do you foster independence by getting students to set their own work, or is it a mixture of both approaches? So if I can pass that question across to yourself, James.
Yes, so we do, the teachers do set subject-specific homework, and there is a sort of a department agreement around how much, what the frequency, what the quantity is, and most importantly, that is often not only linked to the content that's being studied in the lesson at the time, but also trying to interleave. I'm a science teacher, so making sure the boys are just dipping into B1, even though we're finishing off B2 ecology now, they're just going back and forth in a little bit of B1. That does still need some direction from the classroom teacher. And so the classroom teacher, that we generally do two things: they get that set work of the content we're doing in lessons to help consolidate, but also then just a little bit of a reminder that actually you need to go back and have a little go at cells in B1, just to help with that interleave, to help with that repetition. And I think from that then gets the students into the kind of habit of saying, okay, well, I've gone back to B1 and I've really struggled with cells. Maybe I'll have a little look at communicable disease. And sure enough, communicable disease is really challenging. They go in there and they find they're really struggling. And so that then gives them an opportunity to say, okay, well, I'm going to use the study guides. I'm going to have a little read of the study guides. Then I'm going to redo the questions and see if I can improve.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's have a quick look. So how do you get families and parents involved in students' learning? That's from Francis. Maybe over to, either Sarah or James, whoever wants to answer that about families and parents involved in students' learning.
You go first, James, and then I'll add anything I think of.
Yeah, so I think in terms of, as I said, our just sort of cautious approach to screen time. One of the things we say to parents is we're expecting you to help us manage your son's screen time. And I think this has been one of the ways for us to do that quite powerfully, is say we've brought into this product that is the best place for your son to be going for his independent study. And I think that in itself allows the parent to say, okay, well, I am going to limit your screen time. I know you have some homework. I know you've got some independent study on Educake. I've also got this sheet of paper. I've got that student report from your the sort of parents' evening. Make sure you're studying these things. So I think that communication, just in terms of the fact that we endorse this as the really high quality tool for them to be doing online, and then trying to limit the rest of their screen time at the same time, us being able to give really rich data to the parents, really rich information to the parents to kind of support them in then supporting their sons, which is fundamentally what they want to do. And so I think this has been really powerful for us.
Thank you. Anything you wanted to add there,
No,
Sarah?
I just wanted to share our resources page that I briefly flashed up on the screen there. So within the Educake homepage, every teacher can access lots of handy resources, and that's just at the top. If you click here, it will bring you on to loads of resources we have. So there's a letter you can share with parents about Educake. Even if you've been using it for a while and you just want a push, it's something you could send out to parents. And we also have some great videos as well. So there's an Educate for Students video that would talk them through everything they can access from their homepage and their independent study tools. But there's also a version of that for parents that speaks to the parents. And I think that's a really great way of getting parents on board. They're literally 2 minutes long. So yeah, just wanted to show those.
Fantastic. Let's have a quick look and see if we've got any other questions. How do your departments work together? How do we know what other departments are doing? And that's from Louise. Maybe across to you, James.
Yeah, so I think, as I say, we've in terms of our implementation, we sort of did it in a tiered process. We talked about it at senior leadership and then leadership, and then in real detail with mid leaders. And as I say, we had a really tenacious head of humanities who was able to really troubleshoot for all of the departments. At the same time, I'm then able to kind of share the best practice, share how some things are going well in departments, what things might be improving. I think a nice example is the kind of communication for us between geography and maths. Our sort of head of humanities was the expert in Educake. The maths department had historically used another tool. And there were just some little intricacies in terms of differences between Educake and that previous tool, one of which was being able to see specific mathematical symbols, and we gave that feedback to Educake, and then the next day that was fixed. But at the same time, the maths department are really keen to not only get the students to complete the questions, but also to show their working, and then that to be demonstrated in the lesson. And so our head of geography was able to show exactly how you can set a piece of work, but at the same time, you can then export that piece of work in a format that can then be presented in lessons, in which the boys can then go through their answers. All right, they got the answer feedback from Educate, but then also go through their working, and the teachers just get an opportunity just to check that they are doing that working, because it's a really key skill that may otherwise be lost if the boys were just working online. And for me, that was a really fantastic kind of bit of communication between our heads of department, where a problem was identified, and then the other head of department went away to go and sort of solve it and then demonstrate it. And I think just having it on the agenda of meetings, so that you are always talking about things that are working, things that you've tried that haven't worked. We've talked about having students maybe go away and try and hit a threshold. So have they got 60 or 70% of the questions correct? If not, maybe they should consider trying it again and going again, maybe until they hit that threshold. And we're currently trialing that at the moment. I know it's working really well in humanities and less so in science. And so that gives us really, fantastic conversations about why is it working so well in humanities but not in science.
That's wonderful. So I think that's it for the questions. So if any questions come through late, we will try and answer them when we send out the video. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. So as I said, we've recorded the session, and everyone that's signed up will receive an email with a link to the video by the end of the week. So thank you again to James and to Sarah, and thank you to everyone that's watched and taken part. I really hope it's given you some useful ideas to add to your teaching toolkit. So thank you so much, and have a lovely evening, everyone. Bye.
Thanks very much.